Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the week 3 recording for game design. And you can see that week 3 starts on August 26th, goes to August 30th. So again, I try to get all the work submitted by Friday. That way you don't have anything to worry about for the weekend. And this week is wrapping up the game elements unit. So this week is actually pretty short. So if you take a look at the work, you have the week 3 write-up. Of course, you do a write-up each week. And then you have a platforms quiz, a generations quiz. Then you have an assignment called your first design. This is a 100-point assignment. I'll explain it fully in a little bit. Then you'll turn that assignment in. So for this week's work, there's not a lot of it as far as items you have to do, but this design assignment is really important. So we'll jump right in and take a look at this. One thing before we move ahead though, file names, I've told you before, are extremely important. For instance, the Analyzing Game Elements assignment from week 2, it was a worksheet that you downloaded, and the name of it was GD.2.1, and there were other things at the end of it. I had some students that didn't bother to change the file name, even though I told them to, and they just turn that in. Well, that doesn't tell me or them what that file is. That Analyzing Game Elements, this would have been the perfect way to name that. So when you name your files, name them for the exact assignment. Then you know exactly what it is if you ever have to refer back to it. If I look at week 2, I even said what to name it as. In fact, I should put week 2 Analyzing Game Elements. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and change that quickly. So go to week 2, and that game should be week 2, Analyzing Game Elements. So it's really important to use appropriate file names. So if you have to go back to the work later on, or if I ask you to, you need to submit this because I gave you a 0, maybe I graded it by a mistake when I graded it. So you want it to be easy to find. So please make sure you do all that. Well, let's go ahead and jump into the Game Elements unit. And again, the Game Elements unit, we did A and B last week, so now we're jumping into section C, D, and E. And let's take a look at the week 3 write-up first. So as we look at the write-up, how do companies try to win the battle of gaming platforms? What are 4 reasons hardcore gamers stay away from console games? What may be one reason game consoles trail behind PCs in performance? And what is one major advantage of new generation platforms? So let's answer those questions as we learn about this content. So section C. So now we're going to talk about platforms. And platforms are really the way that games are played. And we talk about, so right here it says the console or the computer game that the computer is played on. So that's what the platform is. As we start to look at this, we know that there are lots of different platforms, and you all have played various ones, I'm sure. So as companies like Nintendo and Microsoft and Sony and as others try to do all this, they try to gain victory over the market, meaning they try to get their market share or get their people to buy their games by making a better product that offers better and more innovative games. So these are the ways that companies try to gain the market and win the market in video gaming, by making a better product that offers better and more innovative games. As we look at this section, we're going to look at identify and differentiate between different types of gaming platforms. We're going to learn about all of those. So types of platforms. The gaming industry is the fastest growing entertainment industry other than Hollywood, other than movies and TV and things like that. And there's lots of revenue at stake, lots of money. So companies, they want to be supreme. They want to be the best, right? And some of the old ones, Magnavox had an Odyssey game, and Fairchild had something called VES, whatever that was, and Television had some games. So a lot of them had some breakthroughs, but then they just got taken over. The ones that have survived, Sony, Nintendo, Microsoft, and others are the ones that have really survived, although Atari and Sega, they're still small players in the market. And of course, there's Wii now that have come out with wireless controllers. So there are lots of innovation that has come along. But one thing, the challenges are, is the PC the better way to play, or are consoles the better way to play? Now, this talks about hardcore gaming enthusiasts, meaning people that play all the time. And it says they normally stay away from consoles because consoles are inflexible, less powerful, have a simple interface, and bad screen resolution. So that is why hardcore gamers stay away from consoles and maybe are more inclined to use PCs. But only the past few years, consoles have really stepped up a little bit. But those are the 4 reasons that hardcore gamers stay away from consoles a lot of times. Now, the thing about all of this is that you can imagine console developers, they start planning, like if Nintendo wants to have a new console, and they start thinking about it right now, it won't come into market until at least 2 years from now. But then if you look at PC games, PCs are always upgrading, and games can be set up and designed for PCs much more quickly than they can for consoles. Now, as they start doing it, there are some things that need to think about. And if you look down here, they're talking about consoles, and console designs often do not take into considerations computer technology. That is a main reason that consoles trail behind PCs. So the design of consoles usually do not take into consideration the latest development in technology. So as computer development, computer technology moves ahead, console games kind of lag behind. So that's the main reason right there that consoles always trail behind PC-based games. You can see the idea about new generation platforms, and there's a guy named Moore, and he says that computer capacity doubles every 18 months. So that would mean like the hard drive capacity, the speed of the computer, the quality of the graphics, all of those things double every year. So you can see how all of that stuff has grown over the years, and as games came in, then they had to match up to that growth in technology. And some of the next generation platforms, Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo Wii, those are some of the next generation. As we move down here, and this talks about next generation, they use motion controllers. But one of the major advantages of next generation or new generation is wireless input. That's one major advantage of the new generation is wireless devices, wireless input devices. Whether it's motion controller or the handhelds with wireless. So that's a major advantage of the new generation. And here are a couple of games to look at. There's a 2D chess game and a 3D chess game. And this will just show you the differences. And you can just click on one of these and actually both games show up on the same screen. Just take a minute to look at the differences between 2D and 3D and see how games have changed. And now the platforms quiz. So you're going to do that quiz. And of course, here's the platforms quiz. And as I did for this week, as I mentioned before, for this whole unit, all the quiz previews are right here. So there's the platforms quiz. Pretty easy quiz, it looks like to me. So that's the platforms quiz. So make sure you get that done. Let's go back to the write-up. So did we answer all 4 of these questions? I think we did answer all 4 of those questions. Okay, section D. In what year did the gaming industry collapse and how many years did it take to recover? Then list the different generations of gaming, their estimated dates, and one game from that generation. So let's go to section D. So section D, I'm going to look at generations. And just like you have generations in your family, your grandpa was born 70 years ago, your father was born maybe 45 years ago, you were born maybe 16 or 17 years ago, generations, right? And you could put those generations on a timeline. Well, gaming has generations too. So in really commercial market in 71, meaning commercial market, meaning that people could start buying them and using them in their homes. And there was a collapse in 83 and a renaissance 2 years after that. So the collapse started in 83 and lasted for 2 years before the gaming industry started growing again and evolved from this type of game right here that I played back in college in 1977 probably, to the types of games that you're playing now with the 3D graphics and real life images and things. So in this section, we're going to look at the evolving nature of games and look at different generations, learn more about generations of games. So here's a tutorial on generations, and it's going to read it to you, or you could click for the script down here. So I'm just going to click on the script. So it starts talking about the beginning. And of course, we learned already that Space War was the first game. In 1971, Pong was developed. So that was probably the first generation was the Pong game. So it started in 71. Then we can see down here that the second generation, it started in 76. And there are a few games listed in there. Then there was the game crash in the early 80s. So this talks about some of the game crash and things like that. They're getting to the third generation, so you can see the dates for the third generation. And third generation was the dark ages of games. So there was like 9 or 10 years in there where there really was no new technology. And it really doesn't say much about new types of games in here, but go see if you can find a new game that was developed between 83 and 92, since that's one of the questions. So this talks more about the crash. And then a little bit more, this is really like the fourth generation right in here, fifth generation right in here, sixth generation, seventh generation. And you can really think that we're probably in the eighth generation now, and we're getting into the wireless and all of that. But what I want you to do is go through this, and if we go back to looking at that write-up, all I'm asking you on that is list of different generations, their estimated dates, and one game from that generation. Okay, so we looked at those couple of slides already. The generations practice activity. So click start on that. And there's actually a list of the different generations. So see if you can drag and drop the games into the generation that it belonged in. First one, of course, you just drop it like that. So Space War, we'll put in the first generation. So that'll help you with part of that question. All right, the generations quiz. So you'll do this quiz on these couple of topics. There's generations quiz over there, quiz preview up above. Now we're already into section E. So this is going pretty fast, isn't it? So let's take a look at the Class Connect write-up. So for section E, in gaming, what does pseudo real-time mean? What are the 4 modes in which Travian can be played? Travian. So let's go into section E. So in section E, the game has various player modes. So we already talked about the consoles and PCs and things like that, but then there are player modes, single player, 2-player, multiplayer, different things like that, right? Sometimes it's just a player against the CPU, against the computer, single player. Sometimes it's players against each other. Now you're going to go in, you're going to analyze this game called Travian. So you could click right there and go in and see the online game Travian. And you're going to look at different player modes and look at play 2 sample games with different player modes. So Travian, it's a pseudo real-time massive player multi-strategy game. What pseudo real-time means is that the time passes like real time. So, I mean, not as slow as real time, but you go through different days and hours and things like that. So, like building a granary might take 20 minutes, but upgrading it might take several hours. So, what they're trying to do is to give you a feel for real life gaming. So the game operates in real time. We can take action whenever you wish, but each action requires time for it to happen. So that's what pseudo real-time means. So you get the real-time feel of a game as you play that. And you can see that there's multiplayer mode, single player version. But I think as you get into it, you'll see that there are other ways you can play Travian. So the gaming modes in Travian, so you can listen to this, or you can look at the script. So if you look at Travian, there's a single player, multiplayer, co-op, means that you work with each others, you aid each other, and then massive multiplayer. So those are different ways that it can be played. And there's a little tutorial on it, and you might like that game. So go ahead and play that a little bit. In fact, I'll probably change that write-up question and say, give me your opinion of Travian, so it will force you to play it a little bit. All right, here's another game you can look at. It's just an online racing game, so you can go play with that. And finally, now we get to the end of this. And actually, before we do this, I'm going to go back to that write-up before I forget. And if it'll let me do it here, I'm going to change that one question. What are the 4 modes that Travian can be played? Give your opinion after playing it for 10 minutes. So I'm going to make you play it. I'm a pretty horrible typist, aren't I? So I just changed that question a little bit. So you play the Travian game. Okay, cool. Now, where were we? We were at the end of this unit. And this is your first design. So in this assignment, you're going to start beginning or start developing a game. And remember, as I said earlier, like getting started, I talked about it, and in week 1, you're not going to develop a giant, huge game with challenges and characters and all that in this course. But you are going to do the basics of it. For instance, let's say you were working for a game design company like Nintendo or somebody like that. And your job is to come up with the ideas of new games. Well, that's the place you're going to be. You're going to be the game the game designer, the brains behind the game, rather than the developer. The developer would be the programmer. So you're going to come up with this game, and this is going to be the beginning, and it's going to be used for other activities in this class. So this is really the starting point of everything. And you can see this is 100 points. So this is 1/10 of your grade, so it counts a lot. It needs to be done well. So let's look at this. For whatever game you want to think, you'll design a game by yourself that has a unique plot and interactive gameplay. So unique plot would be something unusual. So let's say, here's a silly one. Okay, my game is going to be a game where a student tries to get the best grades they can in school. So it's going to be an interactive virtual game where they would go to class and they would turn in work and things like that. So the plot of my game would be students try to get the best grades possible. And then they would go to see their teachers each day. So I'd develop a game around that. And then they would get points for turning in good assignments and those types of things. So kind of silly, but so you could imagine the story that I would write about that game. And the characters. So I might have, one character would be me as the student, but then there might be a bully character. Then some of the teachers would be different characters. What are some challenges? Well, in my game, talking about a game where I would try to get the best grades possible, my challenges would be getting the work done and making sure I followed all the teacher's rules and requirements for the work. Some strategies that I might have would be to turn the work in on time, make sure it's complete, etc. Some rules for my game. Well, some rules would be making sure I get to school at 8 o'clock every morning, make sure that I can open up my locker the first time I try it. So in my game, you might lose points if you forget your locker combination or something like that. So I create different rules for the game. Instructions. So I come up with instructions and levels of play. So levels of play with this game that I was just talking about, this fake school game, I might have a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior level of play, right? So that's just an idea. Now, as you think about this, you're going to not only cover all of these items, but you're also going to answer these questions at the bottom, and I'll show you more about that in a minute. So that's some example. Now I expect, and we're going to look at the assignment description in a minute, but I expect this storyline, it needs to be significant. It's not just going to be one or two sentences. It'll probably be a couple of paragraphs. The characters, who are the characters in it? That might be, you might have 3 or 4 characters, so you're going to need to describe each of those characters and the part that they play in the game. Challenges and strategies. You're going to have a bunch of those, rules, instructions, etc. So this isn't just a piece of junk assignment. I would say that to do this assignment well, you're going to spend probably 2 or 3 hours on this, because the rest of the work for this week goes pretty fast, not more than an hour. So this assignment might be 2 or 3 or even 4 hours of good high quality work. All right, let's go down here to the assignment description. So here's the assignment description. So all this stuff is still the same as was on the other page, but how are you going to present this information? You have 2 choices. You can do it in narrative form, which would mean you do it in a word processor. And if you were doing it in a word processor, and this is really important, if you were doing this in a word processor, you would have story might be one section, characters might be one section, strategies, and what I would do, I would probably highlight all of these, then copy and paste them into a word processor, and each of these would be headings for different sections in my word processor file. So I'd highlight all of these. Actually, check this out. Here's what I would do. If I was doing a word processor, I'd copy, I'd go, let's get a blank word processor open up here. I want file new. Then I would paste those in here. You can see what I'm doing here. I'm actually making sections for my paper. And I can do the same thing in PowerPoint. If I choose to do PowerPoint. So then my story would be lines of information here for my story. Characters would be all my characters. Challenges would be all my challenges. Rules, all my rules. And then at the bottom of my paper, I would then answer each of these questions after I did my writing. And I would answer that question. Right here, answer that question. So you can see how you could do this work. And if I pasted this into a PowerPoint, rather than doing it in a word processor, so if I pasted this into a PowerPoint, then of course I would have my title slide, but then story would be slide 2, characters slide 3, challenges and strategies slide 4, rules and instructions slide 5, or rules and slide 5, instructions slide 6, levels of play slide 7. And some of these might end up being a couple of slides. And then this would be slide 8. It would be my last slide. I would answer those questions. So I hope that describes for you how you're going to do this work. You can understand that. So the narrative format, you're going to do it in a word processing document. You should include some pictorial representations of your games sketched by you. Now, I know some of you are going to say, well, I'm not a very good artist. Well, neither am I. So let's say if I was doing this game, the one that I talked about, the fake one of a student working from their freshman year through their senior year in high school, if I was going to create a game around that, some things I would sketch is I might sketch the main character, which would be me. I could go online and I could probably find where I could create an avatar. Well, that's not sketching. You need to sketch it yourself, because game developer or game designers, when they start to make a game, they just do pencil sketches. They lead it up to the graphic designers to do the real work. So I would just sketch maybe the picture of the school, maybe sketch my locker. I would maybe sketch a picture of one of the teachers. I would sketch a picture of me as a student. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but you do need to include your own pictorial or representations sketched by you. And on those, when you do sketches, you can take a picture of them with your phone. You can scan them and put them in your document. However you want to do that. Now, what I would suggest, if you're doing PowerPoint, you'd have one slide that is my sketches, and you just have 4 or 5 different sketches on that slide. If you're doing a word processor, you would have one page that would have different pictures of all your sketched items. That would be my suggestion. Okay, PowerPoint. So if you're going to do a slide, or if you're going to do Prezi or different presentation software, same thing. You're going to use custom animations if you want to, images sketched by you, but I already talked about how you would do this in both a PowerPoint and a word processor document. Now, if you turn this in, and if you look like you did decent effort on it, you're not going to fail it if it looks like you get decent effort. But I'll tell you, if you don't include the images, the sketches and things, you're probably not going to get anything better than 68%, which would be a D. Because that's the sketching and what the characters and pieces of the game might look like. Those are important component to game design, because you have to tell people what your game's going to look like in order for them to, or show people what the game's going to look like in order for them to start creating the game for you, for the designers to start designing, and the developers to start doing their work. So that's enough about this assignment. So let's go back up here to course home. And week 3, and as I said, as you do this, you're going to call it week 3 your first design. And again, that's a 100-point assignment, so I expect really good quality work. And this is not something that you do in a half an hour. This is going to be, it's going to take you a few hours to do this work. So you might do a little bit of it on Wednesday, a little bit Thursday, a little bit Friday. But it needs to be a good, high-quality piece of work. Okay, thanks everybody. We've answered all the questions. Let's go back to the Class Connect write-up just to make sure. Week 3 write-up. Pseudo real-time, Travian, we talked about that. Okay, so we are finished. I look forward to your work coming in. And if you still have week 2 work, week 1 work to get done, please get those things caught up. So thanks a lot, everybody. I look forward to some really interesting game designs and game thoughts. So thank you, everyone. Bye.